And if you bet that the Braves were not about to get swept by the Diamondbacks, you bet right. That was the
Absolutely.
right way to go. Because, of course, about 2 months ago, about that time, the Braves beat the Diamondbacks in Arizona and certainly were looking at a 4-game skid. Atlanta hadn't had a 5-game skid in 5 years. So I think that it was just
Ooh.
like Brian Snicker talked about ahead of game 3. He believed in his team and he believed that, hey, these things happen and that they were going to come back. And they did. They came back in a big way. In fact, it was a come from behind 7-5 win over the Diamondbacks in the series finale. And it was just what we talked about as well. Our second half MVP killed it. Austin Riley got his 4th home run in that 3-game series. And of course, Matt Olson, 2 home runs on the game to ensure that the Braves also would not have lost more than 4 in a row since they had a 6-game skid back in 2017. But let's go ahead and talk about how they were able to escape the sweep with what Riley and Olson were able to do at the plate.
I'm gonna call these guys. I was sitting there watching them last night, right? And after Matt Olson, after they went back to back, and Matt Olson went up to Austin Riley, they kind of did this number like together. I was like, oh man, that looks very familiar. And I was just like, yeah, Jose Canseco and Mark McGuire. These dudes out here looking like the Bash Brothers, because you're talking about 4 home runs, 11 RBIs, OPS over 2,000 for Austin Riley within this series. Because
Yes.
I'm so happy that, you know what I'm saying, like, we give people the juice because he's been
Mm-hmm.
listening to the show and we say, hey, man, you need to step your game up. You've been balling, true enough. But, like, we've known Austin Riley ever since he came up, T. Like, this
Mm-hmm.
dude can get on a hot streak and he will
Yes.
mash and continue to mash as much as he possibly can. So, it was really cool to see both of them working in congruence with each other, just out there just saying, hey, we understand that, Spencer Strider started off amazing and then, had a little blip, and gave up 4 runs. So,
Mm-hmm.
but we got our guys
Yeah.
back. And I think that this is something that we need to get used to because regardless of how the pitching staff is doing, regardless of how the bullpen is doing, one thing I really feel like in this moment right now, as of July 21st,
Mm-hmm.
we can count on these bats to pop at any moment.
Well, yeah, you can, because if you look at Matt Olson's 16-game on base streak, that tells you all you need to
Yeah.
know about Matt Olson getting on base and
4 walks in this series, I think.
getting
Yeah.
getting the Braves in position so that they can actually score. We were talking about the fact that they were 0 for 5 for runners in scoring position in that second game, only left 1 stranded last night. So that's where
Right.
or yesterday rather. So that's kind of where you want to see things land as well. And then going back to what you were saying about Austin Riley, you look at the fact that in the 3-game series alone, he had 4 home runs. He had 1 home run and 2 RBI in the previous 11 games in July. So, yeah, that's
Yeah.
the type of surge that you want to see from him.
Mm-hmm.
And also, we talked about the fact that all Spencer Strider needed to do was just put the Braves in position to be able to win the game. And yeah, it got a little shaky on him on his way out, back-to-back home runs. But ultimately, you saw what you needed to see with the 13 strikeouts. And we talked about our questions, not just on our show, but also in stopping by the Bleacher Report stream when we were talking about potential moves at the trade deadline. And we were
Mm-hmm.
saying, hey, that bullpen, middle relief, and closer might be a space. So it was good to see Kirby Yates be able to at least get strikeouts. He got the win, of course, last night, and for Raisel Iglesias to get his 17th win. All of the things, 17th save, all
Yeah.
of the things that we just mentioned are the formula that
Yeah.
we're going to have to get used to, where can we get 5 or 6 solid innings out of the starter? Can we get middle relief not to just blow it? And if you happen to get on the board first with Orlando Arcia, but somehow get behind in runs, we know that I'll say close to the middle of the order, because we know the bottom of the order got in there as well and got some hits. But the middle of the order is now starting to show themselves again. And that's really, really exciting, I think, as well, because we need to know that if they're going to be the comeback kids, they can get it from any place, the top, the middle, or the bottom of the order.
Yeah, and that's and in that middle of the order, that's where you expect it from the beginning, right? So I
Yes.
think that to see those guys surging like they are, I think that's a really cool sight to see. And back to the Spencer Strider for a
Yeah.
second, I think that was such a interesting game, right? Because when you think about like Zach Gallen had a
Yeah.
perfect game going through 5
Yes,
innings.
right.
And,
Exactly. That was a duel. That was a
yeah,
true
it
duel.
was a absolute pitching duel. And I thought Bally's, think they were slick. You know how you're not supposed to, mention that, hey, he has a perfect game going through 4 or 5 innings.
Right.
And right there in the 5th inning, before Orlando had come to the plate, they kept showing the graphic. He has a perfect game through 5 innings, or no, through 4 innings, and then he said they had a perfect game through 5 innings, and then they say he has a perfect game through 5 innings in the 3rd. I'm just like, what is going on? And then next thing you know, Lando Arcia, there goes their perfect game, Brandon Gowton. Like I was just like, yes, like this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That is absolute pettiness to
It
the
is.
nth degree. T. I
And it's so
absolutely
baseball.
love it.
It's so
It's
baseball.
so baseball. I was
Yeah.
like, yes,
I enjoyed it too. And that's why I was saying as well, like, I'm sure that so many around the majors with races tightening up because of, of course, the Orioles usurped Tampa Bay's stronghold on 2nd place in the major. So now they're just 3 games behind the Braves, if you will. So I'm sure that there were a lot of teams out there looking, hoping, wishing that the Braves were going to be swept. But I think you make a valid point. Not only did they not get swept, but we saw so many things in that game, regardless of getting behind, regardless of those back-to-back home runs from Strider, that are encouraging because it looked like the Braves of old. So with them being also, of course, first place in the NL East, taking on the Brewers in Milwaukee, their first place in the NL Central. This is going to be another critical matchup for the Braves and a critical matchup for Michael Soroka, who we saw a few days ago, sort of in a bullpen space, looking at Brian Snitker, kind of watching to see where he was. Obviously, it must mean that he's confident in being able to put him in that starting position to open such a critical series.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting. Like this is going to be very critical. Excuse me, let me change my word. Like I feel like this is going to be critical for Michael Soroka because we are almost kind of like you mentioned. I think you even mentioned yesterday when you talking about how Michael Soroka kind of like going through the whole AAA experience up in the major leagues by being coming out of the bullpen and stuff. I thought that was kind of interesting how you put that. So I think that this right here though is going to be big for him, and I really think that he's going to come through for the Braves because at the end of the day, I'm not even looking for a 6-inning type of performance. Like if you can give me four or 5 innings, 5 1/3, you know what I'm saying? No 1 or 2 runs at the most given up. I'll be okay with that because at the end of the day, Soroka is a guy that, it's going to take some time for him to work back. Because at the end of the day, when you're coming off multiple injuries like that, you got to get a good 1 season up under your belt before you even can think about getting back to the level where you were or even exceeding the level that you were before you got injured. So I think that right now, if he can just go out there and give the Atlanta fan base like 4 or 5 innings, I think Soroka will be good. He'd be ready to rock.
Yeah, and that comeback mantra is a refrain that we heard from Ronald Acuna Jr. earlier in this season, acknowledging what it was for him to come back and how it pretty much took all of last season for him to get back to what we're seeing right now, which is MVP caliber play. Now, speaking of just being able to see what Soroka can do in getting him a start tonight, we've now been told that Alan Winans, in all likelihood, the Braves haven't confirmed it quite yet because they're probably going to wait for tonight, but he'll be brought up from AAA. I know that name kind of throws it off, right?
The wine is like, you know where my mind went. I was just like, wait a minute, BB and CC got a son up here playing baseball?
Right. It's like, are you kidding me? Yeah, like another one. So they play baseball and they sing gospel too. Like they're so darn talented. But no. This is just Alan Winans,
we're right here,
baseball
we're right
player,
here.
the end, who's been brought up from AAA to likely make his MLB debut in a start with Milwaukee Saturday. And not a bad stat line, by the way. 2.81 ERA, 1.003 WHIP in 13 games, 8 starts for Gwinnett, and 89 strikeouts to just 25 walks and 102 2/3 innings. So you really kind of like that stat line. And obviously there's something that Brian Snitker, Rick Kranitz and company saw in him to say, hey, we know this is a pivotal series and we trust you to be able to get it done.
Yeah, and that's all you ask for, like you said. And it's basically the same expectation for Soroka. Don't go in there and just give up 12 runs and be coming out in the 2nd inning. That's all, because give the team a chance. Just give a team a chance. Give the Bash brothers, Austin Riley, Matt Olson, give those guys a chance to make this thing right. The MVP candidate, like all these guys can turn the game at any moment with the swing of a bat. So all you got to do is just don't just don't mess up. That's
I mean, right,
if
the
I
end, there's
keep it
yeah,
simple as that, right? Don't
keep
mess
it
up.
just don't mess up. Yeah, and just play within yourself. Just that's
Yes.
so important because right now we're also getting news, some updated news about Max Fried. Of course, we know we talked about it pre-show that the weather
Mhm.
was crazy all across Atlanta Metro last night. So of
Yes.
course that meant AAA Gwinnett was rained out. That meant Max Fried didn't get the start last night, but he will get the start in the first game of their doubleheader tonight. And they're looking for him to try to get through, to your earlier point about 4 and 5 innings. If maybe he can get through 5 innings, that might indicate, hey, he doesn't need another rehab start. And if that's
Yeah.
so, and you kind of look at the rotation of the starting pitching for the next few series, you've got, of course, the Milwaukee series this weekend, and they get a day off, and then they hit up to Boston. Then potentially Max Fried might be on the mound come Wednesday in that series finale against the Red Sox. I like it.
I can't wait.
Encouraging.
And Bart Scott, my Bart Scott voice. Can't wait.
Can't wait. Yeah, it should be awesome. But listen, getting Fried back is so important as well because that just stretches that starting rotation. And it maybe takes a little bit of pressure off of Alex Anthopoulos on the starting pitching side. So either he can focus on the bullpen, or as we talked about in our bleacher stream yesterday, he can focus on maybe a hybrid member to join this pitching staff. What do you guys think? I mean, these are some exciting times for the Braves to be able to bounce back, but also potentially get some new guns in their rotation with Winans and potentially get some returning guns in a Soroka tonight and maybe a Fried next Wednesday. Drop that comment or any comments about the Braves, the Falcons, and even the Hawks trying to get some more help for their backcourt in our chat. That's what you always do anyway. So let us know. Jarvis told us about some great comments in the chat yesterday. We might even talk about what you said over the weekend when we come back on Monday. That's checking us out on YouTube, of course. And don't forget to check out ATL Day Ones wherever you download your podcast.